my name's Mike Davis. I'm from the Six Nations Reserve. I'm Turtle Clan, Cayuga Nation. I've been involved in the cannabis industry since the legalization, since Canada legalized it. It was going, really good for a long time. We were giving back to the community. There wasn't any problems with police. And up until October 9th, 2019, that's when everything changed. I think it was just under, we were almost at that year mark when we got raided. So basically what's happened on our reserve is the elected council formed a cannabis commission, and they're trying to essentially dictate and tell everybody what they can and can't do with cannabis because they want to tax it. There's 8% gross sales that elected council is trying to collect, so they're trying to shut everybody down. So what happened that day was the police came in. Nobody was shown a warrant. Nobody was read their rights. They came in. They immediately pointed a gun in my brother's face. He said he rolled down the steel roll downs because he thought it was a robbery. So this kind of black cat in a black vest came up and he said there was a gun in my face, and he's like, man, I was like, it was an instant reaction. We have a robbery procedure, and he said it just kicked in. So they went around, they smashed out the little tiny windows that we had, for no reason, just destruction of property. They once they got in the building, they started to assault people. So as soon as they got in the building, both of my brothers were inside there, Ryan and Kenny Davis. Ryan was laying down and Kenny was laying down with their arms out in front of them. So when the police came in, Ryan immediately got sucker punched, and then he said that they start kicking and stomping on his head. Dallas, he has a tracheostomy tube inserted into his throat, so he can't lay down on his stomach. So he was on his knees with his hands on top of his head, and he told me he was hunched over. So, nobody was resisting arrest, nobody was trying to fight the police or anything like that. They came in and, they assaulted and roughed up their own community members. And right after that happened, my little brother, Kenny Davis, was threatened by Sergeant Tim Bomberry. Kenny immediately told me when he got out that morning at around 1 a.m. that Tim Bomberry said to him, you just made a fucking enemy. And we just got some police reports back, so, Tim has his little version of what he said. But, he's still threatening a community member. He basically took out the F word. You know what I mean? He basically said, do you want to make an enemy of me? And, that's not acceptable to say to any community member, that can only be interpreted as a threat, you know what I mean? He's been on the force longer than my little brother has been alive, and he has the nerve to say something like that to him. So I couldn't believe, the threats, the assaults, and then them trying to lie and cover everything up. So one of the black and white, lies that we have uncovered already is Braden Hill is a Six Nations police officer, and we caught him in a little lie. So he told that he's the one that took Dallas Porter to the hospital. The hospital staff and the doctor asked Braden Hill what happened, why Dallas was injured. And it says right in Dallas's hospital record that Braden Hill doesn't know what happened. It says Braden Hill says he doesn't know what happened in quotation marks. And when you go to Braden Hill's police report, he tells a completely different story where he claims he knows what happened to Dal, saying, a door hit him in the face, causing a bloody nose. And it's like, why are you making up lies in your police reports? You were telling the hospital staff that you didn't know what happened, and you have this completely different story in your police reports. You know what I mean? That's obviously a lie caught right in, you know what I mean? Otherwise, he would have said, if he knew what happened, he would have said it right to that doctor then and there, instead of saying he doesn't know what happened, and then going back later and making up some sort of story in his police reports. We all submitted complaint letters, detailing what happened, those went off to Dave Smoke. We all asked for a third party to investigate because we don't want the police investigating themselves. That's insane. It's a clear conflict of interest. And of course, the police refused it. They investigated themselves, and they dismissed all of our complaints. My two brothers actually got. I'll send you those letters, Tom. What the police sent us. So they're word for word, exactly the same. The only difference is a semicolon. Other than that, it's just saying we're dismissing your complaint that our officers treated you unlawfully, and he didn't even meet with us. Before even interviewing us, he was able to solely dismiss our complaints like they didn't matter. They were nothing. You know what I mean? And just brush everything under the rug.
And has this officer, or the officers involved, have they had a history of violence towards other people in the community that you're aware of?
Oh, 100%. If you look back on Tim Bomberry alone, he's had cases, lawsuits of excessive force on him. So, it's nothing new in our community about the excessive force used. You know what I mean? Like, our officers don't even do drug tests. You know what I mean? Like, who knows what they're on? There's stories of, cocaine and steroids, if they don't test their officers and they're going in and busting these heroin houses, how do they know that their officers aren't using the heroin themselves? You know what I mean? Like, these officers are out of control. They're assaulting community members. They're lying about it. They're threatening community members. We have pictures I'll send you as well. Mikey Anderson, when he was walking away from everything that happened, he was laughing the whole time during the raid, like right after the assaults happened. You see him smiling, like laughing as soon as he steps away from the door where they entered, and he's laughing. You see him laughing all the way to the road where he goes to greet community members. And one of our community members even said, "Quit laughing. This isn't funny." And then he has the nerve to tell her, "I wasn't laughing." And it's like, "Oh, really? We have you on video of you laughing the entire way that you're walking to the road." So I mean, it's just how they conducted themselves this entire time has been nothing but unprofessional. It's just ignorant, incompetence. It's frustrating. It's just very frustrating to have to deal with a police force like that, and at the end of the day, they get to investigate themselves and dismiss complaints without even meeting with us.
Do you have any insights as to what's going on with the band council and the police, and who's actually in charge, or who's responsible, or where the chain of command is?
So to my knowledge, Steve Williams is still in that position. There's been no public, letter sent out saying that he has resigned or anything like that. It's what elected council put out, and we have heard we've just been kept in the dark this entire time. They like to talk about transparency and all these letters they release, but we have no idea what's going on in our community. They're talking about an officer just got suspended for breaching confidential papers or whatever. And, that whole thing that they said was supposed to be transparent. And we don't even know who that officer is. You know what I mean? Like I said, they're still keeping us in the dark. And we have no idea what's going on behind those closed doors with elected council and the police.
Okay, so what happened after the raid occurred? Did your store stay closed?
After we got raided, we knew that they were just going to pick off shops one by one individually. And we had to come together as a community. It had to be, a group effort with everybody. So if they wanted community experts, elected council, we have community experts standing behind the Six Nations People's Cannabis Coalition. We have a professor that teaches at a university that got his PhD at Cornell University that's willing to stand behind this. And he's from our community. Like, we have, vice principals and leaders and role models in our community that are willing to stand behind a community-driven cannabis movement. They don't want to see it in the hands of elected council so that they can tax it and they can control it, you know what I mean, for the mega rich. That's who we all know it's getting set up for. So, if they want those community experts and, those people in our community, the professionals, we have them here and they're willing to stand up and stand behind a community-driven cannabis movement. We were all for health and safety from the start, and we wanted to make that clear. So one of the first requirements that the community decided was that there has to be a THC and CBD label on all cannabis products, because you wouldn't sell LCBO wouldn't sell alcohol without, the percentages, letting people know how strong it is. So that was a fair starting point. because not even the cigarette industry, does any safety tests or anything like that. Like, we're literally breaking ground, starting something new here. So that is the initial testing is for THC CBD, and during the 6-month interim period, all these shops that are opening are all going to be collectively working and donating towards a community-run testing lab where we can get the mold and pesticides and the fungicides, heavy metals. We can get all that tested, and we can get it done at bare minimum cost. So that's going to do nothing but benefit our community members, and we know that we can do that within a 6-month time frame. And elected councils talking November 2021. Like that's just unacceptable. Like we're taking the precautions. Everyone has agreed to not sell to anybody under 19 years old. Like I said, the THC CBD levels are the first requirement. Your shop is inspected to make sure there's no like mold or water damage or any of those kind of hazards inside your building. So we're actively taking steps to make sure that the health and safety side is there. And, for elected council to stand there and talk about health and safety when their own bingo hall is illegal, both provincial and federally, because there's a ban on smoking in the workplace because, it's a well-known health hazard. So for them to say they care about our health and safety is a complete slap to the face. They only care about, money, because a lot of our youth work in that bingo hall, in that smoking section. I've worked there for almost 3 years. I did a lot of shifts inside that smoking section, and I'm probably going to have health, problems because of it. Like secondhand smoke, stroke, strokes, cancers, all that stuff is caused by, the cigarette smoke. So, I mean, like, I worked in that for years. They didn't care about my health then. When I looked up at the ceiling when I was working inside that building, I seen like brown fur coated all over the top from people smoking in there all day. I'm inhaling that stuff, and they're saying that's okay, but this ain't okay. We're going to go and break this law, but this one, we're going to uphold. It's like they're picking and choosing, and that's, like I said, it's a huge slap to the face, because it just obviously shows they don't care about anybody's health and safety if they're willing to break both that provincial and federal ban on smoking in the workplace and allow all these people in the same room smoking cigarettes when that's clearly illegal and unsafe.
Can you talk about how many meetings you've had of the coalition and how many people are involved? Like, do you have a list, or like how many people signed up with your coalition over the last few days? If you can talk about how that went as well.
In the update for the last few days, I guess there are just under 10 shops ready to open for tomorrow, July 1st. And there was just under 40 people who paid and registered to have cannabis businesses. A lot of them said that they're almost ready. They're going to be ready within the next few weeks to the next month. So I believe it was just under 40. If I'm not mistaken, I don't want to be wrong on this, but I think it was 38 people paid and registered to have cannabis businesses in the next so often. They're just, like I said, just getting them ready. It's definitely a huge, improvement from where we started from, because it was just, families that kind of on the reserve that just came together that were sick of their rights being violated. And, if we don't stand up to this, then they're just going to keep taking away our rights until we have nothing left.
Could you talk a bit about the overall view in Six Nations as far as you're aware of it, in terms of the community's attitude towards cannabis?
So from everybody that I've talked to, they're all for cannabis. They want cannabis on our community because it's a medicine. They see how it's helping people with all these illnesses. They see how all these dispensaries want to give back and, build up our community's infrastructure. We want to give back, the way that the cigarette industry never did. And that's a huge part behind it right there. So, on the other hand, though, you have the people in our community that will just say, oh, mind changer, and they won't think twice to, even listen to the people in front of them that are saying, the CBD has helped my child. We presented to them, and they have said that. I've been in the longhouse when that has been said. The CBD has helped my child with, autism or whatever illness. We've had a lot of people come in there and talk in front of them, but at the end of the day, there's some people that aren't willing to listen, and they're just going to say mind changer, when they're sitting there bringing, coffee into the longhouse. And technically, that's, like a drug from Colombia, that they're bringing like an exported drug into the longhouse, but they'll sit there and say, that this is a mind changer, copies. You know, you don't think that won't change your mind? You know, like, it's just very hypocritical kind of thing, like I said. But most of the people that I talk to are definitely for cannabis because they all know it's a medicine. It's not, you know, this hurtful, harmful drug, whatever. They know it can do a lot of good for our community.
Band Council put out a statement on the cannabis issue. They say that illicit cannabis grown, processed, and consumed in our community has resulted in, quote, devastating overdoses due to cannabis being sold that was laced with fentanyl.
I've seen that.
And I'm unaware of there ever being a proven case of that anywhere in Canada as to this date.
I was just about to say that. And we actually have a video footage of Tim Bomberry when he raided us, and that was a question that was asked. He's like, Tim Bomberry brought it up, and he's like, oh, there have been, you know, reports of fentanyl in cannabis, and then he immediately after he says, I'm not seeing it happen here, you know, so like we're not like we don't know if, you know, a case happened here because, like I said, they're keeping us in the dark. If it happened, nobody knows because, you know, nothing ever gets to the public. But I have never heard of a case of cannabis being laced with fentanyl. That is completely unheard of to me.
I don't know if you could talk a little bit about your view on that, on the commission, on what it's accomplished, and what your relationship has been with it to the extent that you've tried to work with it.
Okay, well, first I'd like to say that Cannabis Commission through elected council has accomplished nothing. I've been going to their meetings since they first start having them, when cannabis, you know, became legal. And they're just still talking about the same exact things. Nothing has been done. They've brought in these outside organizations and these, you know, companies to do the work for them. And, you know, they've wasted $400,000. Like, that could have bought our community testing facility right there. But, you know, they've decided to waste the money. And, you know, now we're left with them asking for more money. You know, like, it's just impossible to work with these people. We've tried to reach out to them. We've invited them to our meetings. They've come to a few meetings, but then, you know, it just stopped. And we were informed that nobody from elected council or the Cannabis Commission, they were all advised that they couldn't attend our meetings. And it's, you know, we don't understand that because they're community members and we're inviting them to a community meeting. They should be able to attend our meetings. So, like I said, they're keeping everybody in the dark. They're wasting money. And they're just delaying, dragging their feet. They want people to apply in November 2020, and they're saying dispensaries to be ready to be open November 2021. And, you know, they've had years and years and years to prepare for this, and they're still dragging their feet. And in all honesty, that date would probably get pushed back because they were supposed to release some permits in August. There was some big things going around in August of 2019 that they were supposed to release permits. And of course that got pushed back. So now they're saying November 2021, you know, of course that's going to get pushed back, you know, if they're just dragging their feet and doing what they're doing. But we have reached out to them. We have tried to work with them, and they, you know, are just incapable of working with the community. The community tells them what we would like to see, and they just go and do the opposite. So the chairperson, Nanda Garlow, there was a bunch of complaint letters submitted that I can send one to you as well that mentions she's in conflict of interest because she runs the Two-Row Times, and she put an article in her paper before making it public, you know what I mean? So she's like essentially using her paper for personal gain, or for her position with the Cannabis Commission, for personal gain with her paper. So, like, you know, that commission is, like I said, we tried to work with them. We tried to put that out there, and they just don't want to work with the community. They want those three people to dictate and tax it and just, you know, try and destroy the industry that the community is fighting so hard to, you know, make it thrive down here. They're just trying, like I said, destroy it.
Would you say that elected band council is trying to get you to follow the Canadian system of cannabis production and regulation?
Oh, 100%. That's, like I said, I look at it as assimilation. They're trying to introduce taxes onto our reserve, and that's something that the SNPCC, the People's Coalition, has overcome. You know, we found a way around so we're not taxing our own people. We figure out a way so that it is worked out as a donation. and they can give as their financial system allows them to. If they want to give more, then that's totally up to them. If they want to give less, that's totally up to them. It's not at a set price. So, it's a little ridiculous. And like you said, for them following the provincial, that provincial way, I think our police, really have to be talked about again, because they opted out of that OIPRD, I believe it's called. So that's basically like the provincial watchdog, to look over the police force. They opted out of that, but yet they're still enforcing those provincial laws. So it's like a really weird system that doesn't make sense to me on, like I said, why they're still enforcing these provincial laws, but they are out of jurisdiction to get investigated by a provincial watchdog when they assault their own community members.
Yeah. Have you been watching the, for you, has it been, is there a resonance for you in what's happening in the States with Black Lives Matter and really all across the world?
100%, because we fought that fight since the beginning. It's Black Lives Matter and it's Red Lives Matter. We both went through the struggle. We both, felt that racism and felt that oppression. We felt that, the excessive force hand of the police. We're right there with them. You know what I mean? We're being victimized every single day by these police officers out on these streets, just like what the Black Lives Matter is protesting against with the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. You know what I mean? We're seeing that in our own communities as well, with the cops not caring about anybody's safety, and they murdered George Floyd, and they could have easily murdered my friend Dallas Porter. So it resonates very closely to us, because like I said, we're going through a very similar situation.
What do you expect to happen when you have 10 stores open tomorrow and another 20 or 30 on their way? How do you think, is there any strategy to respond to police raid? Are you dealing just with Six Nations officers enforcing, or also OPP coming, or how does?
As far as we know, it's just Six Nations officers, because everything that we're doing is within the Six Nations territory. So to involve, OPP, that would be outside of OPP's jurisdiction in my view. So what we've been doing is just as a community coming together and saying, we have to stand up, we have to be one on this. Otherwise, that assimilation, that government, will take over. Like I said, we just have to stick together as a community, to fight the oppression and everything that's been happening.
All right. Well, I want to thank you very much for your time, Mike, and I'll be looking forward to see what happens as this story develops into the future.